The House will come to order. I pledge allegiance. The prayer this afternoon will be offered by the good delegate representing Prince George's and Anne Arundel counties.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this St. Patrick's Day 2025, may God grant you always a sunbeam to warm you, a moonbeam to charm you, a sheltering angel so nothing can harm you. May green be the grass you walk on, may blue be the skies above you, that pure be the joys that surround you, may true be the hearts that love you. Amen.
Okay. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There be 132 members present. The House is now in session. Clerk will read a journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March 7th, 2025.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So ordered. Petitions, memorials, and other papers. Special order calendar number 52. Recognizing the maker, Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 467, Metro Funding Modification Act of 2025. Favorable report adopted.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. With lightning speed, we have an amendment at the desk, 483020/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We heard a little bit about this bill today. I hope everybody's paying attention. That's tough. It's tough. We vote 1,000 times in days. Everybody's got lives. Everybody's got bills. Everybody's got things going on. I hope you're paying attention. If you pass the bill as currently configured and Virginia and D.C. do as much, and they probably will, you're basically saying you're going to take $50-some million a year. The estimates are range 53, 58. It's going to go up of TTF, Transportation Trust Fund monies that today can be used for roads and bridges and I don't know, the MTA in the Baltimore region, bus lines, things of that nature. You're going to take all that money, 50-some million bucks. Thanks how hard it is for you as a member of the House of Delegates to get $50-some million transferred to something that you would like. And we're going to take $50-some million extra, not by itself, extra on top of the hundreds of millions of dollars we already provide to WMATA. We're going to eat it out of the TTF for all those other purposes, give it to WMATA, because WMATA is unfortunately and highly unlikely ever going to be anywhere close to self-sufficient. It is a very large metro system that runs through innumerable number of jurisdictions, 2 states, nation's capital. It doesn't work from a fiscal standpoint without massive subsidization. So what the amendment does is this. It puts a guardrail or a limitation upon the TTF transfer. And it basically says that the grant, not all of the monies that we've committed to WMATA, that would be unfair, but this new monies, these new $50-some million a year and ever going up, that would not be made unless, and I honestly took to heart because I know her to be a person of good faith, the floor leader on the bill suggested that, well, it wouldn't be, and I'm going to use a phrase that she didn't use, but robbing Peter to pay Paul if our Transportation Trust Fund revenues went up. If our Transportation Trust Fund revenues go up, then the first $50-some million presumably of that new transfer would go to WMATA or those new funds. And what the amendment says is, what if they don't go up? We're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul. We're not going to take money from potential bus lines in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, or roads in Western Maryland or Anne Arundel County. We're not going to take those monies for the extra WMATA spend unless the Transportation Trust Fund revenues have increased by at least 2% from what they are in fiscal 2026. That's all it says. If our TTF revenues remain flat, we're not going to steal money from every other objective of the TTF for more money for WMATA. If they go up and the legislature chooses to spend that revenue raise on WMATA, that's the top priority. If we bring in $50, $60, $70 million more than what we did the year before, WMATA comes first, apparently. But if we don't, just like everybody else, WMATA can't get the extra money. You can't rob Peter to pay Paul if Peter doesn't have the money to begin with. And that's all that the amendment does, and I hope that it's considered in good faith. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the minority leader for his concern, which I share, about the solidity of the Transportation Trust Fund in future years, and now, quite frankly. The one thing that I do want to mention, though, is several years ago, under another governor, I believe it was Governor Hogan, he asked for, and we provided the flexibility to use money for WMATA from the TTF, but also from other sources. So in fact, in previous years, we have not gone, there are times when we have not used the TTF for WMATA. So this amendment would be inappropriate in that sense, that we don't always use money from the TTF. Furthermore, one of the most important things about continuing to strengthen the third largest heavy rail system in the country, on which we've had 56 million rides by Marylanders in the last year. The most important thing that we can do is provide stability for the future so that WMATA can bond the money, which is the point of having dedicated funding. So I would ask the body to resist this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Briefly and in closing, and I appreciate that. If we've got $50-some million extra laying out in some other fund that we're not using the TTF, there's more money in the couch cushions. I think everybody would be looking for it today because we have a multi-billion-dollar deficit and everyone's looking to cut things that are important, in order to find that. So I appreciate the consideration of in other years, maybe we take monies from other places, but really the amendment is really very, very simple. If we don't have the money because our revenues do not meet the outsized expectations for them in the Transportation Trust Fund, you cannot spend it for one particular element of the overall state transportation plan. That's it. That's it. We just did these formulas about increasing monies to WMATA. It seems like we do them frequently, and we have to keep increasing the money because regardless of how many people are riding it, it obviously is in severe financial distress. I'm not an expert at that. My friend, my actual good friend, and the sponsor of the bill is a billion times more knowledgeable about what is going on with WMATA than what I am. But even I'm smart enough to figure out that if every year you need more and more and more money from 3 jurisdictions to keep the trains running on time, literally, it's not a very viable proposition. And I hate to think that if we don't raise the money with all of our transportation taxes and our fees and everything that we're doing, if we still don't raise enough money to pay for everyone else's projects, we're going to divert money from those projects, which are also necessary and needed and have safety elements, simply to go to WMATA. And I think that is something that, as a legislature of 141 people, from Oakland to Ocean City, from Harford County to St. Mary's County, from Baltimore City to the farthest shores of the lower eastern shore, we have to think about how is it that one entity consumes so much of our efforts in this regard. And this amendment, all it will do is put the guardrail on. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to remind the body of a couple of different facts. Fewer than 5% of Marylanders use transit, mass transit. They don't use trains. And less than 20% of the cost, the operating cost of using transit is paid for by the users who use mass transit. And if you look at the other modes, in particular the people who drive on roads, 100% of Marylanders use roads. They get into cars, they get into trucks, and they go to their soccer practice. This is completely, this has everything to do with the amendment, Madam Speaker, and this is, I'll bring it together. But I do appreciate the chair of my committee trying to refocus me on the amendment, and I'll get there, I promise. that 100% of the people who use the roads, they pay 100% of the cost to use a road. They make their car payments, they pay their insurance, they pay for the gas, they pay for the tax that goes into their gas, they pay for the permission from the state to be able to put a tag on their car. They pay all those things. They pay 100% of the cost of this. So my challenge to every member of this body is to go back home to your district, wherever it is, and ask someone on the street if it's fair that fewer than 5% of the people who use transit and the people who do pay less than 20% of the operating costs to use transit, is it fair for them to continue to pay each and every single year to subsidize this program? And I would venture to say that most people, if you present it that way, I would venture to say that most people will think it's not right. And so, in this case with the amendment, if we can put a guardrail on there that basically says that we're going to continue to fund transit, and every single year we pass bills that's very specific to WMATA, because WMATA is bleeding every single year, and all we do is put a Band-Aid on it, but the blood keeps coming. If we could just put that guardrail up that basically says that we're not going to give them any more money unless we have more money come into the system, it still allows this body to prioritize how we're spending that new money. And so this is actually a very good amendment, and this is an amendment that completely makes sense, and I think most Marylanders will think that this is actually a common sense, and it's a rational amendment that we should actually move. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Just a reminder to the body that this will not go into effect. We will not be providing more money to WMATA unless DC and Virginia do the same. And so this is really important, this amendment. It was supported by several Chamber of Commerces across the state, a lot of different organizations, because they understand the necessity of a robust transit system in the DC metro area. It is for the common good, the public good, therefore I press the amendment.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Clerk will take the call. There being 98 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none. Nothing I can do with it. The bill is ordered printed for third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 84. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 767, Real Property Landlord and Tenant Procedures for Failure to Pay Rent, Breach of Lease and Tenant Holding Over, Tenant Possessions Recovery Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A couple comments on this bill. We had some debate about this bill on Saturday, and what this bill does is sets up a reclamation process for the landlord. It's a 10-day process. So once the tenant is evicted, it requires the landlord to hold their personal items for an additional 10 days. And we talked a little bit about the lawsuit that was triggering this, and it was a fascinating read because there's two victims in this lawsuit. The landlord was the first victim who told the tenant to leave the property for non-payment in September of 2018, and the tenant didn't leave until July 31st of 2019, almost an entire year. And then the landlord did some really stupid things, some stupid and mean things to the tenant, and they should have sued and they should have got some money. But what this does is change evictioncy law for the entire state, when then that is not what the court case said. The court case was about notification. We tried some amendments, and unfortunately, now we're going to have this reclamation process that's 10 days after. Now, the floor leader on this bill said, well, other states do it like this. And he listed like Alabama and maybe some other state. It's a funny thing, every state that he listed, I went back and looked, they allowed for the landlord to recover the money from that 10 days. This bill does not. And let me tell you how this is going to work in practice. Because I just had this happen with a real estate client last August. This bill requires you to keep all the personal property. So let me tell you, the landlord's going to take this and pile it up real high in the living room, right in the family room. Pile up all the personal property. And I guess that also accounts for the food that they leave in the refrigerator and maybe the maggots that were left that are growing in the dishwasher. Because I watched this landlord take a ratchet strap and wrap it around the refrigerator and tote it out of the door on a hand truck. This is just impractical. For all those reasons, I'll be voting no, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I'm not going to vote green on this bill because a federal judge told us to. I'm going to be voting green on this bill because our constituents told us to. There was the widow who chose to pay for her diabetes prescription instead of her rent. This bill wouldn't have kept her in her home. It wouldn't have stopped her eviction, but it would have meant that her wedding photos weren't thrown into the gutter. There was the veteran who got laid off from Waffle House. This bill wouldn't have prevented him from staying in that homeless shelter in Frederick County for those 2 weeks, but it would have meant that he didn't lose his National Defense Service Medal. And the children, Madam Speaker, the thousands of children in Maryland who every year face the trauma of an eviction. This bill would not keep them in their homes and their schools, unfortunately, but it would mean that they would not have to deal with the indignity of their Elmo dolls and their teddy bears and their hand-sewn blankets ending up on the street. Because when this bill becomes law, no longer will any child in Maryland have to lose their home and then watch as strangers pick through their treasures on the side of the road. We've heard from our colleagues from the minority party about their concerns. And it is true that this bill requires landlords to do basically what all their counterparts do in every other state, and it is a little bit of a minor inconvenience. And if that causes people to vote red on this, I don't think that makes you a bad person. I respect y'all. I respect all of y'all. But I wish in that moment before you press your button, if you would just think if those people were your grandmother, your best friend, your child who lost something utterly irreplaceable. And I hope you'll think about pressing your green button with me so that we can provide a little bit of dignity and a little bit more humanity for other people's friends and other people's family members. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to get up until you mentioned Frederick and Tickle Me Elmo dolls. But look, that's not how this process works. You can't go in the unit after a judgment of possession has been granted until the sheriff shows up. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even allow us to do an amendment to say there was an agreement so that both parties amicably, responsibly, and carefully could meet together and get the stuff out together that would avoid all the scenarios you just listed. So in other words, what this bill does is it requires the landlord to keep it 10 days after the sheriff gets there and the sheriff doesn't even show up in Baltimore City. Not picking on Baltimore, but if it's under 36 degrees, the sheriff doesn't even come out. So the reality of this situation is that the landlord can do nothing. Nothing. They've had someone in there, and sometimes it's a good person. Sometimes it's a person who hasn't paid them in a year. Hasn't paid them at all in a year. They've lived for free. They get a judgment of possession, and they got to wait another 2 months to schedule a time for the sheriff to come out to meet them together. And then you'd have to go 10 days beyond that. Doesn't make any sense. That's not how this works in real life practice. There is no one, and by the way, if the landlord goes into the unit before the sheriff shows up, you can take him to court. You could take him to court for that. And it's a criminal charge. If you change the locks, if you do all these things, the landlord gets hammered. So I appreciate your story and you're good at it, but the reality of this situation is that's not how this works. The landlord cannot put the stuff out until the sheriff is there with them. The only thing this bill does, and the net result of this bill, if you have given 10 more days to people that have refused to pay their rent, to a major disadvantage to a landlord. And look, not everyone's Jared Kushner that owns 500 units in Baltimore. Most of these people are individuals that happen to own a single unit that they moved out of when they got married and had kids and moved into a bigger house, and they happen to rent this place out, and they have someone who refuses to pay them. And this body keeps making it harder and harder and harder for that landlord to rent out the place. That's the reality. That's the only thing this bill does that makes it harder and harder and harder for a landlord to come to an agreement with the tenant. That's it. So for those reasons, I'll be voting against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too wasn't going to rise until I heard some comments on the floor that inspired me. You know, it's been said that the 10 scariest words in the English language is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I know that this body wants to help individuals with housing and opportunity. But I have to tell you, in recent years, on a regular basis, when this subject comes up out in our community, I hear people say, "I'm selling my rentals because Maryland is making it too difficult to rent my homes." I was on the floor the other day when this was being debated. Someone from the community called me, and I told him about it. I said, "What do you think, Mike?" And he said, "I can't wait to sell that rental." And what I fear is, it's not this issue on its own. Because, you know, it's mentioned that, I don't know, I think you maybe said Utah or some red state has a policy similar to this. It's not the one policy on its own that has an impact on whether or not there's enough rental properties in our communities. It's the totality of our overall policy in this state. And I know many entrepreneurs, many people who use this to create wealth for their family. They scrape the money together, they buy a rental, or they buy a house, they rent it out, they work up over a period of years, they buy a second one. It's a way to create wealth in their family over time. But this policy, even though I agree the intent is to help individuals, it is another weight in the formula as to whether or not somebody says to themselves, it's worth it or not. I'm telling you, there are many Marylanders today who believe that this legislature has gone too far and implemented California-like policies here in the state of Maryland as it relates to rentals. And so the private rental market, I believe, will continue to dry up exponentially over the next few years because we have tilted the balance too far in one direction. It's too far in the direction of the renters, and I think the landlords, the property owners, are going to say, "I give up." Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 767, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 781, Election Law, Polling Place Procedures, Voting by Elderly Voters and Voters with Disabilities, Accessibility and Expedited Voting Act of Maryland.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 781, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1283, Charles County Off-Highway Recreational Vehicles Regulation and Enforcement.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1283, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1310, Prescription Drug Repository Program, out-of-state pharmacies.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1310, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1355, Health Insurance Required Coverage Hearing Aids.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1355, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1427, Maryland Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, revisions.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1427, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, calendar of...
Madam Speaker?
Yes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to be recorded in the green for HB 1310. Thank you.
Madam Speaker,
Yes?
I'd like to change my vote on 781 to green, please.
Get your slips up. Yes?
Madam Speaker, green 1310, please. Thank you.
Any other vote changes? Okay. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 85. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 226, Anne Arundel County Public Schools, School Schedule Options.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 226, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 371, Prince George's County Speed Monitoring Systems, Maryland Route 5.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 102 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 371, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 577, Business Regulation Enforcement for Miscellaneous State Business Licenses Study.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 102 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 577, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 747, Environment On-Site Wastewater Systems, Requirements for Inspection and Pumping Services and Extension of Sunset and Implementation Dates.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 747, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1155, Department of the Environment, definition of ecological restoration.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1155, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1236, Queen Anne's County Municipalities Speed Limits.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 139 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1236, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 86. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 30, Limited Line Credit Insurance Qualification of Applicants.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 139 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 30, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 799, Economic Development, Maryland Innovation Initiative, Institution Partnership, Extension Program Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 799, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 906, Campaign Finance, Political Organizations, Disclosure on Solicitations, Stop Scam PACs Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 906, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 963, Montgomery County Highways Maximum Speed Limits.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 124 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 963, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 983, Election Law, Local Boards of Elections Language Assistance Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 106 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 983, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 988, Montgomery County Speed Monitoring Systems, Maryland Route 200, Inter-County Connector.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 103 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 988, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 87. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 332, Consumer Protection, Electronic Funds, Transfers, Regulations, Elder Fraud Prevention Act of 2025.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 112 votes in the affirmative.
Madam Speaker?
Yes.
My entire desk didn't work on that one. I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Okay. I'm aware of that. House Bill 332, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 762, Maryland Higher Education Commission Higher Education Goals Revisions.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 762, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1106, Business Regulation Travel Services Special Fund Fees and Surety Requirement Don't You Worry Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate?
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a question for the floor leader.
Madam Speaker.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you?
Can you help me understand the title of the bill?
Yeah, it's a great question. The Worry family from the 23rd District went on a pilgrimage to Hajj, and unfortunately they passed. And so what we're doing here is trying to ensure that we regulate travel agencies in the state by coming up with a registry program here in Maryland.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining the title of the bill.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further? Okay. Is there any further debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 113 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1106, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1124, Dorchester County Well and On-Site Sewage Disposal Activities Privatization Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1124, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1266, Task Force to Study Land Use Issues in Prince George's County Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Please. If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1266, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1367, Lead Testing and Inspections Falsifying Information Penalty.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker, vote change.
Hold on one second. There being 133. What is your vote change for?
Not this one. You go right ahead. You
Go ahead. If you said you had a vote change.
Yeah. 332 to nay, 762 to yay.
Yes.
At 983 to red, please.
Madam Speaker, 1266 from red to green.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Hurry up, please.
HB 963 to read and HB 906 to read.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 781 to green. Thanks.
Yes.
963 to nay, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1367, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 89. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 500, Procurement Reform Act of 2025.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 125 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 500, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 769, Real Property Residential Foreclosures, Commencement Restrictions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 139 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 769, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 838, Health Occupations, Licensed Direct Entry Midwives, Revisions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 838, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 850, Work Group on the Creation of Data Dashboard for Public Work Contracts and Apprentices Establishment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 850, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 861, Transportation Network Companies Weekly Fare and Earnings Summary and Operator Data Reporting.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 102 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 861, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker,
Yes?
I'd like to be recorded green on House Bill 1367.
Get your slips up here. Yes?
Madam Speaker, thank you. Green on House Bill 906. Thank you.
Yes?
Madam Speaker, red on 963.
Any other vote changes? Okay. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 90. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 691, Tax Relief and State Personal Equality for Service Members Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 691, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 744, Motor Vehicles Reckless, Negligent, and Aggressive Driving, Sergeant Patrick Kept Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 744, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1007, Disability and Life Insurance Medical Information Genetic Testing Protection Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1007, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1151, Residential Real Property Sales Appraisals.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1151, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1419, Electric Distribution System Support Services, Energy Storage, and Data Use.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1419, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1480, Child Advocacy Centers, Continuity of Care Standards for Health Professionals and Reports of Violations.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1480, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 22. Recognizing who? Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Appropriation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
Ho. Sorry. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 71, Education, Holocaust, Education Assistance Grant Program established. Favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Now you can.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendment lowers the mandatory appropriation to $50,000 and eliminates a maximum cap on the amount a school system may receive for the grant. Move the committee amendment, please.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now, favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1391, Education, Artificial Intelligence, Guidelines, Professional Development, and Task Force. Favorable with amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes requirements that the County Board of Education designate an employee to facilitate the use of AI. It strikes requirements that MSDE conduct an AI needs assessment and the creation of an AI on K-12 education task force. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their present? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading House bills. House Bill number 107. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 853, Post-Conviction Review Procedure to Reduce Duration of Sentence, Maryland's Second Look Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We spent a little over 2 hours, very difficult hours, yesterday on the bill, so I won't want to belabor a lot of that. I'd like to extend to our colleague, the gentle lady from Baltimore County, a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for her remarks. She's obviously a person of good faith. She has more ability to turn the other cheek than I find myself that I would find, and she's a good person who wants to do good things in the right way. I had hoped and I had wished truly and sincerely that we would have been able to limit the scope of individuals who would have been able to receive the benefit, because it is a benefit of this bill. I think that at the end of the day, the reality is this is kind of how the system works. Someone commits a terrible, significant, awful crime. And I'd like to note, I hope everyone recognizes, we did not offer amendments to limit the scope of the bill from those convicted of second-degree murder, felony murder. We didn't try to limit the scope of individuals who maybe committed a very horrific act, an aggravated assault, shot at someone, but the end result was not the same, because we do understand that there are individuals for whom that act of rehabilitation, and I'll use that other than redemption, can occur and can return to society within that shortly after 20-year period, perhaps in a better posture. What we've tried to do is say that can't be everyone and every crime in every situation, though. It can't. The reality is, and statistical studies confirm this over and over again, sadly, a significant number, really a majority of violent crimes, violent acts are committed by men aged 16, 17, 18, up through 25. Are there people who commit these horrific acts in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s? Sure. There are. The vast majority of them are people who have been committing horrific acts of violence all along the waterfront for whatever reasons, and that's not mine to debate, but there are people of all walks and stripes of life who develop a predisposition or a level of comfort with violence that separates them from people who we can have in our communities and from the role models that we want to illustrate to our children and the safety that we need for our neighborhoods, because they have a predisposition. There are people, I'm always reminded when I talk about this of the case several years ago in Baltimore County of an attorney that I knew very well whose son walked into his parents' bedroom and his two siblings' bedroom and executed them in cold blood in the middle of the night. I had just had business dealings with that attorney 2 weeks beforehand. His son is still incarcerated, obviously. And I remember his grandparents, the mother and father of their son had been murdered by their grandson. Their other two grandchildren had been murdered by their grandson. And how they came and said, you know, we still love him. We still love him. And that's right. But we can't let people like that out of jail early, because there's something that has gone so fundamentally wrong. Some of the examples that were given, there's something that's gone so fundamentally wrong with someone who would murder children who would go into a place and spray bullets through a room much like this and wantonly and recklessly kill people. Something has gone so wrong that for me, I don't think I could ever trust and believe that it could be put back 100% for safety. We'd love to be able to support the bill and support the gentlelady's ideas because they are noble and honorable in many ways. But because we will not limit, we will not do things that I think the vast majority of people would say, just listening to it over a cup of coffee, that has common sense. Do it, but don't do it quite like that. Do it, but don't do it quite that far. Do it, but take into consideration all these other factors. Because we won't do that. We can't submit the bill. And I'll say, finally, and in closing, we did talk a lot about redemption. I am a person of faith, probably not near as well versed in it as so many of my colleagues in this room, who I believe really take faith to heart. But I would leave you with this. We cannot offer child murderers, we cannot offer mass murderers, we cannot offer people who would slay a pregnant woman simply because they're pregnant and they don't want to have the child. We cannot offer them redemption. It is a power beyond ours to grant. A higher power may be able to offer them redemption. The victim's family may be able to offer them some measure of redemption. All we can offer them is freedom. And that's all this is designed to do, is get them out earlier. And what happens in the real world, well, I'll just plead guilty to life with the possibility of parole. That's not life. I know that in 20 years, I'll get my second look. So I'm pleading to 20 years, and then we'll see what happens. And if, as we heard over and over again, well, these people won't get out. These worst of the worst, these most horrible people, these people won't get out. Then why not eliminate them from the bill? Logic suggests that if all of you believe that those individuals should not get out, then we should say that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Baltimore City.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I just want to say I understand the minority leader's words, and I know some of the things that we heard on Saturday were gruesome. And the reality is what this bill does is it doesn't give someone automatic release. Let's remember what this bill does. This bill gives people the opportunity to make a petition to get a second look at their case. A second look. That's what this bill is doing. I rise in support of this bill. You know, I represent the 40th District, West Baltimore. The unfortunate reality is proportionally, we send the most people to prison in this state. So when I come here, I often think about how can I ensure that I'm thinking about those citizens also behind the wall and those families that are affected here. And I'm always working to figure out what kind of legislation can we work on and pass to lower recidivism, find ways to make sure people are on the right path. And when I was searching for people to help me with this, when I first became appointed as a legislator, I was sent to a man by the name of Chris Wilson. Chris Wilson was a resident in my district, former resident of Prince George's County. Chris Wilson is now a multimillionaire, serial entrepreneur, doing amazing things with his life. But unfortunately, his life was hard. He grew up in the rough parts of Washington, D.C., some rough parts of Prince George's County, was subjected to trauma, abuse, dealt with addiction, and at the age of 18, he unfortunately took someone's life in fear of his own. He was sentenced to life without parole. He spent many years in prison, but when he got there, he decided to turn his life around. He studied in prison, learned several languages. He got degrees in prison. He started businesses in prison, and he continued to work with an attorney to petition the court to hopefully modify his sentence of life without parole. Well, that attorney worked with him, and eventually he did get that second chance, that second look, which then led to a second chance. And with that chance, he didn't just redeem his own life and change his life. He has worked his entire life since being released in his mid to late 30s on improving this legislation's work, the work we do here in the legislature, and also improving the lives of others who are incarcerated. He wrote a book called The Master Plan, which he goes and visits prisons across the nation, helping young men and women figure out how to retool their life and live their lives better. But one thing that he really did for us, he did something for us in this body, is he helped me craft legislation to improve our education and systems that we have in our current prisons, that this body voted out 2 pieces of legislation that he helped me write last year. That was the REAP Act, Resources and Education for All Prisoners, HB 92, and the Prison Education Delivery Reform Commission that this body voted for almost unanimously, and the previous bill was voted for with bipartisan support. I say all this to say that if it wasn't for the work that his attorneys did to give him a second chance, a second opportunity, he wouldn't be able to impact the amount of lives that he's impacted thus far, nor would he have given us the opportunity to pass some good legislation right here in this body. So I urge for you all to support this bill, because it's about giving people the opportunity to have a second look at their case, to have the opportunity to turn their life around. And let's remember, many people who get this second chance do more than just give back to their own family, do more than just turn their lives around. They often make it their life's work to improve the communities in which they live and to improve everyone's lives. So again, I urge everyone to support HB 853, and I'll be voting in the green. Thank you.
Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, yesterday we heard how horrific the conditions were in prisons, and I'm relieved from my good friend from Baltimore City to see how many opportunities that individual had in prison to earn multiple degrees, to start a business. It sounds like he actually made it very productive. To me, this legislation is saying that if you kill a child, or police officer, a pregnant person, you kill a spouse in an act of violence, that 20 years is enough. That's what this bill is. 20 years is enough. So an 18-year-old who's now 38, which is younger than me, shocking, but it's younger than me, they're out. They have an opportunity with this legislation to get out. That's what we're saying today. That you kill a cop, you kill a child, you kill multiple children, you do the worst possible thing. And to the minority leader's point, we didn't do an amendment on every conceivable thing. We picked the worst of the worst. That's what this bill is. That's what this is. That the majority of us are literally about to vote to say, hey, you kill a child in our state, no big deal. You're 18, we'll get you out at 38. Have a great life. Be a motivational speaker when you come out. You know, can inspire others. What about the wake of victims? Do you think those parents, do you think those family members, do you think the community of that horror are going to be better off in 20 years? Is that what we're saying? That's what this bill is. And I 100% sympathize with the bill's sponsor, who has probably had a lot of time to process, and I can't imagine. But I got to be honest with you, I got to stand up for all the other victims. I got to stand up for all the other families that may not be ready for this legislation. That we didn't, I mean, look, we offered amendments for the worst of the worst. They weren't accepted. I want to thank a lot of the folks in this room that supported those amendments, even to their own detriment of their own party. But that's what this bill is. We're saying that 20 years is enough. You kill a child, 20 years is enough. You kill multiple people, 20 years is enough. And I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to make that call. I'm not ready to make that call. I'll be voting red. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. John Lady from Baltimore County.
Madam Speaker, this will probably be the strangest comment, but I'm not one who just talks the talk. I believe in walking the walk. And when I came here, someone I greatly respect said, you should do this because you'll be able to do for the young people in the state of Maryland what you've done for so many in Baltimore County, and I at Baltimore City, because I've always had some really tough circumstances where I've taught or been an administrator. So I rise to make this promise. And during the break, I made phone calls and no one said no to me. So my commitment is this, because this is a tough thing, but I know that so many of the young people who've ended up in prison who would fall under this bill are not the worst of the worst. My commitment is that as long as I draw a breath in God's world, with my friends, and maybe some of you, I will commit to an organization to support every person, if this bill should pass, who comes out on second look. I will know their names. I said yesterday, I don't know, or Saturday, I don't know their names, but I will know their names, because no one should ever come out of prison and be alone and not know that they have someone who's watching after them, for them. And so we have made a commitment today, and there'll be more, to make sure every person, man or woman, who comes out under second look will have somebody who's going to be watching and caring and listening, because they should have had somebody doing those things for them in the first place. I wish I could take back the things that they have done, but I can't. But I can make this promise. You don't know me, but when I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I mean that as sure, and I say it in front of all of you, as sure as God is my witness, and I embrace the love and magnitude of what he can do. And I have to end by thanking the majority leader. Thank you for your kind words. Huh? What did I say? Oh, Lord, look, I just took you somewhere else. Lord, let me take that out the air. I've learned so much, though, from all of you. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise, and I want to respond directly to the minority leader. I rise as a person who also is a woman of faith. And as a woman of faith, I struggled with this bill. But I came to the conclusion after doing the studying, after doing the prayer, that I am not God, but I am made in the image and the likeness of God, according to my faith, the tradition in the Bible that I read. And the Bible that I read and the God that I serve used people who were murderers to deliver nations. The God that I serve and the book that I read uses a man who he considers, even at his death, a man after his own heart, who was a murderer, who violated women, who caused multiple families to lose loved ones, and he still used them. I strongly disagree with what is constantly being said on this floor, that you're just giving someone another chance. I heard the minority leader say that there is an ultimate judge, and I do believe there's an ultimate judge, and that's not us, but that we are giving permission to a judge, to another judge, to take a look, not to give a get out of free card, but to take a look, to look at what this person or this individual has demonstrated in those 2 decades minimum that they have served. And I don't believe that any of us have a right, not if we call ourselves men and women of faith, to go against what our faith teaches. And that is, it is not our responsibility to judge. It is our responsibility to trust. This is not a second chance. It is a second look. And I believe that we need to be honest and to be open and to really look at what our faith tradition says when we make some of the statements that we make on this floor. Thank you so much.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't worship, but if there's one thing I think that would bring us a lot of insight on this bill, is if we could be honest and frank about what it does and how this works. Currently, after a judge or jury defines a defendant guilty, Maryland law gives that defendant 13 post-trial motions that they could take advantage of to try and change the outcome of their case. And when I talked to some of the opponents of this bill, I said, you know, it doesn't seem like this is the Second Look Act. And one particular opponent said, no, this is more like the 14th, 15th, and 16th Look Act. So we give these defendants who are tried and convicted, largely of very heinous crimes, 13 opportunities to change their outcome. So I'm wondering here today, we use a lot of language that really tells the public we're doing something that we're not doing. And what I hear today is we're convincing the public that we're going to give these people a second chance. This isn't a second chance. This is a 14th, 15th, and 16th chance. And I think what we should really think about are the mothers who came to committee and told the stories about how they had lost their sons. I wish we could give those people just a second look. Wouldn't that be great? To be able to support victims and say, we're just going to give you one more chance. And I think frequently I ask myself, why do we not stand up for victims? And why do we break our backs to leverage the system to give people who have been convicted of crimes, heinous crimes, a 14th and 15th and 16th look at their sentence? So, you know, for those of you who know me or work with me on committee, I think I find myself to be a bit of a balanced person. But a 14th and a 15th and a 16th look act for people who have largely committed murder is very unbalanced for when we have people coming to us telling us they wish they just got a second opportunity to be with a loved one. I don't think that balances out. I think we should support victims more, and that's why I'm a no today, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I rise in support of this legislation, the Maryland Second Look Act. But it may not be for the exact reason that you would think. We've talked a lot on this floor about second chances. We've talked about forgiveness. We've talked about our deeply held beliefs and our faith. But to be quite honest with you, those are not the reasons that rise to the top when I think about my passion and the need for us to pass this legislation. For me, this legislation is about justice. Was justice served in this sentence? We know that in Maryland, Black residents are 30% of the population, but 72% of our prisons. Our own Maryland data tells us that Black and Latino residents are sentenced to longer sentences than any other group or any other community. We know that in Maryland, young Black men serve more time in our prisons than any other state in the entire nation. That is more than Mississippi, that is more than Alabama, that's more than any state in this entire union. I'm not proud of that. Was justice served? So for us to have a piece of legislation before us that allows us the opportunity to take another look at those sentences for people who were 18 to 25 years old when convicted, for us to have the opportunity to ask the question if justice was served in that sentence. Why would we not take that opportunity, colleagues? Knowing what we know, knowing what the data shows us about the disparate representation when it comes to sentencing and when it comes to race in our prisons. That's what this bill is about. It is about justice. So if you believe in fairness, if you believe in making sure that our justice system works for all, then colleagues, you will proudly vote yes for this bill. I urge every single member of this body that believes in fairness and equality in our justice system and equal application of justice to vote green. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I supported these amendments yesterday, and I listened to it all, and my good friend, the sponsor of the bill, I listened to it, but I was reading some things on this, and I was reading about the victims, and I appreciate all the amendments we put out there, but after this was over, I went to the chairman and I said, well, what about one thing? Why don't we do one amendment, another amendment on this bill? And that amendment would have been, had I been the next of kin, the father, the mother, the husband, the wife of the victim, what about me? And why don't we put something in this bill to sit back and say, you know, I'm the one that's living with this. This body's going to make a decision for me. It's going to say, you don't matter. A judge, some guy who's appointed or elected, he's the one that matters, what I'm going through. And I don't have that big a heart right now where I'm able to forgive each time. And I don't have that big a heart where I'm able to look somebody in the eye and say, gee, it's okay you killed my daughter. This judge decided it's okay, so you go be free. I'm living that life. When does my sentence end? My sentence doesn't ever end. And that victim, that is the victim there after the real victim. But all we need to do is look at this, and I probably could have voted for this bill had we put something like that in. If I'm willing to forgive the person who's living this hell right now, if I'm willing to forgive that person, then maybe this bill would make sense. But you don't have the right to make that decision for me and let me live with this person being free, and I'm without a child. Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Is everyone recording the
Speaker.
vote? Yes.
I'd like to explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, as a member of the Black Caucus, I felt necessary to explain why I'm voting red today. Many of us have been unlucky enough to serve in the military, and we've seen the horrors of war, what humans can do to one another, but many of us also witness torture, brutal, inhumane actions against innocent non-combatants, infants who've had their heads smashed in, girls who've been cut from vagina to neck, little boys that their heads have been cut off, their hands are cut off, women that are burned with their child in their arms. Kuwait City in Croatia, the Kurds. And just like the perpetrators of October 7th, mowing down concert goers and families hiding in their own homes, I just can't see that everybody is redeemable. And not everybody gets that second look. I've seen it, I've lived it. As a soldier, and many of us here have done that too, and we've sat there as they drew their last breath. These are war fighters, and you know what the last thing they do? They call for their moms. They call for their dads. Daddy, save me. I've heard it. I live it. It's my nightmare because I have 3 kids. I could not imagine not being able to do the one thing that I can always do is protect my babies. And you may sit here and judge me as heartless, unsympathetic, or without compassion. And maybe that's true. But I've dedicated my entire time up here to fighting for victims. I've shared my story to my deepest embarrassment and the humiliation of my daughters just to give victims a voice. So I pray that each of you understand that while I cannot sit here and now fight for the rights of murderers, when their victims lie rotting away in silence, forgotten, and many times by this body.
Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Who got out first? Montgomery can. Okay, go ahead.
To explain my vote.
Explain your vote.
The Second Look Act is what I would describe as legislating for the innocent. Throughout this entire debate, we heard many contributions from the party opposite, from folks within my own party, but I heard no mention of innocent Marylanders who would benefit from this bill. And I think of those Marylanders, James Baldwin said, when you want to judge a criminal legal system, you don't talk to the policemen, the judges, and the lawyers. You talk to the people who need the protection of the law most and did not receive it, the innocent. And when I think of this bill, I think of Gary Washington, who spent 38 years in prison, who would have benefited from this bill. I think of Walter Lomax and the Harlem Park Three, Alfred Chestnut, Andrew Stewart, and Ransom Watkins, all of whom served 36 years in prison for a crime that they didn't commit that would have benefited from this bill. This bill doesn't give second chances. I hear ad nauseum in this chamber about the difference between may and shall. Nowhere in this bill says that a judge shall release an inmate. Nowhere in this bill does it say that a judge shall reduce the sentence of an inmate. But what it does say is that after 20 years, people who need relief, that light at the end of the tunnel for a crime that they didn't commit, they may petition the court. Let's be clear who you're voting against when you don't vote for this bill. It's the innocent. Those who we could provide some relief to, people like Walter Lomax, people like Eric Simmons and Kenneth McPherson, all of whom spent 25 years in prison and could have petitioned the court. That's what we're talking about here. And I'm voting green because, like the sponsor of this bill, I believe in legislating for the innocent.
Time's up,
and that is
John.
what this bill does.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
I was going to take the call. He said, clerk will take the call. There being 89 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 853, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading House Bills number 91. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 830, Health Insurance, Genetic Testing, and Cancer Imaging Required Coverage.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 830, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1208, Public Health, Prohibited Ingredients in Food.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1208, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1222, Public Safety, Immigration Enforcement, Maryland Values Act.
Is on third reading and final passage.
Madam
Is there
Speaker.
any debate? Yes. Minority Whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, this is my 7th session here, and I feel like every year that I've been here, we've been trying to end this program, or I should say, some of us, or some of you have been trying to end this program. Earlier this session, there was a nonpartisan poll, it was alluded to earlier, where 76% of Marylanders, including 65% of registered Democrats, supported law enforcement cooperating with federal immigration officials. And I think that's because most people, if they can get past the political rhetoric, can see that if you are committing offenses in our community outside of just being here without the correct documentation, it's time to go. And we have a few programs left in our state that does just that. I don't know how many times I have to say it till I'm blue in the face, but in Frederick County, if you get arrested for shooting someone, or you get arrested for chopping someone up in a gang-related activity, and they bring you to the station, and then they find out that you're here without the correct documentation, it's time to go. It's time to cooperate with our federal partners. In many of those cases, they had warrants in other places. So once again, I'll be voting against this bill and the other 287G program or bill because it doesn't make Maryland any more safer. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll yield to the bill sponsor if she wants to speak first. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now I lost my place, though. Oh, come on. I raised to oppose this legislation. When this legislation was originally proposed, I was a big proponent of it. I thought it was a compromise deal where it possibly got rid of the 287G program, but at the same time, it really focused on detainer issues. And that is a big problem and big concern with many of our constituents. I know the young lady from Baltimore County has had a bill for the last 5 years to crack down on criminal illegal aliens that have been in our jails already. They're arrested for another crime. And look, we actually, I believe I signed on to maybe 2 or 3 different letters to the governor asking him to help with this situation. The minority whip just talked about a poll, but I tell you, we had this polled back in September from Gonzalez. It was reported September 17th. And we asked the question, do you support or oppose local law enforcement in Maryland being required to turn over to ICE any illegal immigrant who has been previously convicted of a violent crime, convicted gang member, or convicted sexual offense? It came back at 84% of Marylanders supported that issue. And even better, 90% of African Americans supported that issue. So when this bill came, I'm like, hey, I give you the benefit of the doubt. After these high-profile crimes that we've had in Maryland, we're going to fix the problem. And then the bill comes to the floor, and it gets poison-pilled by the committee with the committee amendment that says if convicted after June 1st of 2025. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Illegal immigrant crosses the border in, let's say, California. While they're there, they do some bad things. Maybe it's human trafficking. They're arrested as a felon, committed a felony offense. They're adjudicated, they do some crime, time in jail. Then they're deported back to their country of origin. A couple years later, they're found in the state of Maryland. They're picked up for some type of misdemeanor. They're in jail, in custody already, but by this legislation, they don't have to be turned over to ICE because they committed the offense a couple years prior. This bill is a Trojan horse from what our constituents want. You're saying you're going to fix a problem, but it doesn't even come close to addressing the problem. It's a Trojan horse. And for that, Madam Speaker, this bill is just directionally incorrect. And I'm voting red on it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The bill's sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the gentleman from Southern Maryland. I actually do agree that this bill is a compromise. It provides guidance to our Department of Corrections regarding the circumstances in which they will notify our federal immigration authorities that someone who is in their custody, who has committed a crime of violence, who has committed murder, who has committed rape, who has committed some type of sexual offense, who is in their custody and is about to be released. These are voluntary agreements. There is nothing under the law that requires us to enter into these agreements. And I'm going to be voting for this bill because I do believe that this bill does promote public safety. I believe that this bill will allow individuals within our communities all across the state to feel comfortable engaging in law enforcement without the fear that they may be deported especially if they are a victim of crime, if they have seen some type of criminal act within their community. It would allow them to trust law enforcement. And again, this bill does state that if someone is convicted of murder, of rape, of any type of sexual offense, that we will notify the federal immigration authorities 48 hours before their release. So it is not a poison pill that has been placed into this bill. The date is important because it provides notice. It provides individuals a time frame in which this bill will be enacted. This bill is constitutional in every which way. There is no constitutional right for local governments to enter into contracts with federal governments. The bill provides 30 days in which the local jurisdictions who have entered into these agreements to terminate those agreements. And it is important because, you know what, immigration is not our purview. Immigration is the purview of the federal government. And we should not be using Maryland taxpayer dollars to pay for the job of the federal government. We all know in this room that the immigration system in this country is broken. And we pray that our colleagues on the federal level will sit down at some point in time and fix it. But that is not our job today. Since this bill has been introduced, there have been 3 new counties, and last time we were here, I wasn't certain, but I did confirm that they have received their authority to enter into these agreements. And again, these agreements do not make our communities any safer. If anything, it causes individuals within our communities to feel just the exact opposite. And for all of those reasons, Madam Speaker, I am going to be voting green on HB 1222.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It was discussed in our committee, the cost that the good delegate is trying to save us from for our counties. Mine is one of the 3 counties. Her estimate was that it could cost about $12,000. So God bless you all for caring so deeply about the Harford County taxpayers, but I think we're okay with spending $12,000 to do the following. The 287G program is not what it's been sold to you as. It's a little confusing, so I'm going to walk you through it so that when you all get hit in your primaries and more reasonable Democrats take your spots, you'll know why. What it actually does is when folks come into our system, we screen them. But the person who's screening them has been trained by ICE to do so in a way that is not racist and bigoted, not looking at people or listening to them and saying, this one doesn't look right. This is a system where we ask every person on intake, where were you born? It's self-reporting. They don't even have to answer the question, but people do. And when they do, they're then screened by this individual in our county jail to see if they have the appropriate documentation. What we find out, though, is that many of them have never come across ICE before. These are people committing crimes in our communities who have yet to be caught by ICE or INS. They crossed through the border, they were never fingerprinted, they have absolutely no documentation, and this program finds them. These folks are new. These are not folks with detainers. We can already do detainers. That has nothing to do with the importance of 287G. 287G is about finding new people committing crimes in our communities who have yet to be discovered. It is one of the most effective methods to finding criminals who should not be here. We grow our own problems in Maryland. We do not need to import them. Montgomery County has a handshake MOU with ICE. They don't have a question. I wonder, How do you think they're figuring out folks they think might be illegal? They're guessing, maybe, just looking at them or listening to their voices, perhaps, and calling ICE. That's not the system we use in Harford County. That's not the system we use in Frederick. That's not the system we use in Cecil. We didn't want to do it that way because that's racist. That's bigoted. We wanted to do it the right way. So we asked folks, every folk, doesn't matter what you look like or what you sound like, were you born here? And then we do a legitimate investigation, and the person who does that investigation is the person who was screened and approved by ICE and trained. That's the system you're getting rid of. That's the system your constituents want you to keep. I guarantee it. And folks on this floor should really think twice about voting to move this bill forward, because some of you think you're in deep blue districts, but even Democrats don't want their babies murdered by illegal immigrants.
Minority Leader. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, it's important to understand the context in which this bill is being offered. So it's been noted by multiple speakers of both parties now that this bill is a compromise. And let me tell you why the public safety balance changes with some of the recent decisions of this administration. I met with the ICE director for Maryland, and he actually confirmed to me a recent policy change that the White House made. They call it the collateral immigration enforcement policy. That means for all these years, they've said the focus has been on violent criminals. These are the people we want out of here. We agree. It's actually on page 2 of the bill. Every county must tell ICE about the release of a violent criminal, a felon, people using firearms and drug dealing, people with DUIs, and people affiliated with gangs. That is on page 2 of the bill. Every county, including those who do not currently participate in any way with ICE, must make those calls and notifications. But what is the meaning of this collateral immigration policy? Well, ICE and the president have decided that when they show up to arrest someone who in fact is a criminal, they are not only arresting the criminal for deportation, they are arresting anyone who happens to be there, including potentially the victim of the crime who called the police in the first place, including their children, including anyone who happens to be standing nearby. That is a huge problem for confidence for people who are trying to get these criminals out of their own communities and sometimes their own homes. So this collateral immigration enforcement policy threatens to completely upend public trust in law enforcement in some communities. The ICE director for Maryland himself told me that this is a policy change and that they are in fact arresting up to half of the people are not criminals. They are people arrested under the collateral immigration enforcement policy. So we very correctly have questions about the 3 counties joining this program and the 3 new ones joining this program and deciding to subject all of their residents for any call to the police whatsoever to the possibility of deportation. Instead, we have replaced it with a sensible consensus list of crimes, as the minority whip suggested, polls well, if that's your flavor, polls well with the public, but we believe that policy-wise, this is a clear and defensible policy. Every county in Maryland will notify ICE for people convicted of felonies and violent crimes and more. And if they so choose to, as a handshake, make additional calls, that is on them. Nothing in this bill stops that from happening. It is a balanced bill, and I think it puts to end, finally, this discussion after so many years. I hope you'll support it.
Madam Speaker, can I redirect?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise because I think this bill is not just about immigration policy, but I think there's also national security implications with what we're talking about here. And what I mean by that is this. Many of you may not even realize, but last year, the Baltimore ICE office actually took someone off the street that had ties to ISIS, an individual that they were looking for quite some time. I think that it's our responsibility to do everything we can When we're talking about dangerous terrorists, to do everything we can to cooperate with the federal government in those kinds of circumstances. And look, I think as a state, we agree that we should be cooperating with national security issues like that, with homeland security issues like that. Inside of the MTA's budget, for instance, right now, is a ton of money that we take from the federal government for the See Something, Say Something campaigns, right? I mean, we recognize that those kinds of things are a priority at the state level. I don't think that we should do anything to diminish the ability to take someone like this individual that we took off the street last year, that had ties to ISIS, off the street here in Maryland. You know, we saw what happened around the beginning of the year, around the New Year's, when people did some really bad things, potentially with ties to the same organization in New Orleans, right? Some really horrific things. I think we should be doing everything we can to cooperate when we're talking about individuals like that. Of course, all of us, you know, to the majority leader's point, we all agree about the violent folks and all that sort of stuff. And thank you for some of those pieces in the bill that do require counties now to probably cooperate in more ways than they were before. I think that's good. But I'm just very concerned when we're limiting the ability to go after someone like this individual that was here in Maryland with ties with a horrific group like ISIS. I don't think that's good policy for the state. I don't think that's good policy for the country. And I think that there are some very potentially dangerous repercussions from something like that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
So I have good news for the gentleman. We thought about that in our committee, and there was an amendment to the bill. On page 2, it talks about if someone has been issued an Interpol notice for criminal organizational activity. Interpol means a request issued by an international criminal police organization. So if there is someone who is on that database, this bill says that we are going to cooperate in those instances as well. So we did take that into consideration, and that was an amendment that was done by the committee. And so for those reasons, again, I am still voting in favor of this bill because we do want to make sure that we're also arresting terrorists and those in gang activities. And just as another follow-up point that was mentioned earlier, ICE has also been able to capture individuals who might have, went past border protections and customs when they came in, and have been able to still capture those individuals in counties that do not have these types of agreements. My county is a clear example of that, as I stated a few days ago, where they captured an MS-13 gang member whose fingerprints were not in the system. ICE came into Prince George's County, arrested that man, and they are going through the proper federal measures to deport that individual. So again, these agreements are not needed because they are clearly able to do their job with or without these agreements. And so for those reasons, I urge this body to vote green on this bill.
The clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker.
To explain my vote, Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote?
To explain my vote.
You explain your vote.
Yes, thank you so much. The person that was arrested in Prince George's County was the number 2 person, and he was released by Prince George's County onto the streets with their citizens. So let's not call that a big win. And quickly on collateral arrests, this bill makes it way more likely that someone's going to get arrested just by being in the same vicinity, because we're now no longer allowing them to do so in the prisons through the 287G program, where there is no collateral arrests because they're in the prison system. So now ICE will have to go to their house and get them with all of their family. And since I'm showing you guys when you make policies that actually hurt the very people that you say you want to help, when we passed dignity not detention, you know what y'all did? You forced everyone that ICE collects to sit in the basement in Baltimore waiting to be transferred to Texas because you banned all of our jails from holding them where their families and attorneys could get to them. Congratulations, you are really helping folks.
The clerk will take the call.
To explain my vote.
Unless you got something that you
I definitely do, Madam
say?
Speaker.
Huh?
I definitely do, Madam Speaker.
Yes, go ahead.
So, to explain my vote.
Too late. It's too late already, sir. Yeah. Yeah. There being 98 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1222, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1292, Health Insurance Provider Directory Required Updates.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1292, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1325, Substitute Child Care Provider Pool Pilot Program established.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1325, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1351, Health Insurance Provider Panels Credentialing for Behavioral Health Care Professionals.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1351, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker,
Yes.
for House Bill 1208, I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Madam
Yes.
Speaker,
Yes.
for House Bill 1122, I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, House Bill 1208 to nay.
Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 92. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1265, Education, Reportable Offenses, and Prohibited Behavior on School Grounds, alterations.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1265, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1375, Vehicle Equipment, Portable Variable Messaging Signs, authorization.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, HB 1375, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1473, State Government Equal Access to Public Services for Individuals with Limited English Proficiency and Individuals with Disabilities.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 109 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1473, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1474, Licensed Professional Counselors, Telehealth, Students Enrolled in Institutions of Higher Education.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1474, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1481, Disability Services Adapted Vehicle Access Pilot Program established.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1481, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1555, Funeral Establishments, Crematories, and Reduction Facilities Oversight Ensuring Dignity and Accountability in Crematory and Funeral Home Operations Act.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? Yes.
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote. Today, I cast my yes vote for this House bill with a heavy heart and a deep sense of responsibility. I want to thank the colleagues in this chamber who voted to suspend the rules and who recognized that this was not an issue for next year, but an emergency for right now. During the committee briefing, there was a silence, Madam Speaker, a silence so deep, so painful that it could not be ignored. And that silence had power. That silence gave birth to this bill. So today, let our vote be louder than that silence. Thank you, Governor Westmore and Madam Chair of our wonderful committee for your leadership in ensuring that accountability and public trust to the families watching today. Those who have lived with pain, uncertainty, and loss, I say, we are sorry. You deserve better. While we cannot change the past, we can and we must ensure that no Maryland family ever faces this again. This bill is more than legislation. It is a promise that oversight will be stronger, transparency, and non-negotiable. And those who fail grieving families will be held accountable. Therefore, to every Maryland family who have ever wondered what happened to the loved one, know this: we hear you, we see you, and today this People House is taking action. Let our vote stand as a declaration that no Maryland family will ever be left in the dark again. I proudly vote yes on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1555, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, House Bill number 93. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1478, Public Health, Report on Establishing a Directory of Home Health Care Providers.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Nobody's up, so if not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in affirmative, House Bill 1478, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1499, State Procurement, Construction and Services Contract Modification.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1499, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1516, Financial Institutions, Consumer Credit, Application of Licensing Requirements, Maryland Secondary Market Stability Act of 2025.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 99 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1516, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1544, Public Safety, Maryland Law Enforcement Public Service Medal and Key Bridge Collapse Victims Memorial Tribute.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1544, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1547, Barbers and Cosmetologists, License Qualifications, Domestic Violence Awareness Training.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1547, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, I have a vote change on HB 1555 to yay. I couldn't hear myself think. Thank you.
Get your gold slip up here, please. Okay. Get one of the pages. Yes.
House Bill 1473, recorded in the green, please.
Okay. Yes.
HB 1555 in the green, please.
Yes. Next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 1499 to red.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, HB 1555 to yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 1555 to yay. Thank you.
Yes.
HB 1499 to red.
Yes.
HB 1474 to green.
Now, why don't you get up
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 1555 to green, please. Thank you.
Just let us up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 1499 to red.
Yes.
1208 and 1265 to nay, please. Thank you.
838 to nay, please.
Madam Speaker.
Get
Madam
your gold
Speaker.
slips. Yes.
With apologies, House Bill 1555 from red to green, please.
Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 88. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 772, Education Career Counseling Program for Middle and High School Students, alterations.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 136 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 772, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 808, Columbia Association Lease Requirements and Governing Documents.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 138 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 808, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 859, Access to Health Insurance for Child Care Professionals, outreach.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 109 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 859, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 889, Fisheries, Striped Bass or Rockfish, Juvenile Survey.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 889, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1001, State Designations, State Cocktail, Original Maryland Orange Crush.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1001, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1004, Public Health, Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, information on prevalence and treatment.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 128 votes in the affirmative, House Bill
Madam Speaker.
1004, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
My button didn't work on that. I'd like to be recorded in the green.
Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 95. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 15, Corporations and Associations, Limited Worker Cooperative Associations, Authorization, Maryland Limited Worker Cooperative Association Act.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 102 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 15, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 19, Health Occupations, Nursing, Loan Repayment, Education, and Sunset Extension, Building Opportunities for Nurses Act of 2025.
Is on third reading and final passage.
Madam
Is there
Speaker?
any debate? Yes.
I just have a quick question, if I could, to the floor leader on the bill. It's just it's not complex. I just have a broad question.
Floor leader.
Yes.
So we've had some issues I know that you all have been working on with the Board of Nursing. They've had some struggles. Does this bill address any of those issues and complaints at all?
All of them.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Is there any further debate? If not, clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker,
Thought he was taking a call. Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? There, good. There being 137 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 19, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 267, Veterans Benefits Matters, Claim Servicers, Prohibitions, and Requirements.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 123 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 267, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 303, Real Property Regulation of Common Ownership, Community Managers.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Yes.
Yes. Floor leader, please.
Floor leader.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Does this bill create a new licensing scheme program?
Yes. Very similar to a bill that we passed a couple of days ago creating a new licensing program for persons who put on eyelash extensions on people.
Yeah, I voted against that too. So how much is that going to cost?
The board will establish the fees.
So we have a problem with the homeownership community member managers, probably because bills we passed here, and now we have to create a licensing program to let licensed people straighten it out?
The problem that we're having is that the community managers do not have a licensing or accountability process at all. We have heard, and persons from your community have...
My community?
We have heard, and people from all across the state have complained that community managers are giving them wrong information. We have Attorney General's opinions, where the Attorney General has filed lawsuit against a number of community managers that have absconded with millions, plural, millions of dollars. There's a methodology that we need to go and prepare these community managers to have some type of training. Community managers across the state, in some cases, are giving the board members and the lot owners and unit owners wrong information. This bill before us right now provides the community managers some type of training and licensure process.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I am still going to be voting red. Thank you.
Is there any
Madam
further
Speaker.
debate?
Madam
Yes.
Speaker.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Floor Leader, how much is that fee going to be?
The board will establish the fee.
I see some comments here about $850.
If I could expand upon that for a minute?
Yes, please.
The board will establish the fee, and it will be based upon income. The initial cost is going to be $227,000, which is going to be in 2027. And after that, it will be the fees or the funds that are collected will be revenue neutral or no deficit to the state, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you. My questions have been answered.
Is there any further debate? Not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 303, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1021, Real Estate Appraisers, Licensure and Certification Qualifications.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1021, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Okay. Okay. I gotta tell him. He's a- The clerk will read the next bill. It's one way to keep you quiet a little bit.
House Bill 1087, Health Insurance Step Therapy or Fail First Protocols Drugs to Test Associated Conditions of Advanced Metastatic Cancer.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has
Madam Speaker, to explain my vote,
Well, can I finish saying my sentences? Are you that anxious? If not, the clerk will call the roll. Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? And not, the clerk will take the call. What is that you want? Just tie him to the seat. Okay, where were we? Oh, okay. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1087, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next.
Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, sorry. Long day.
Yes.
Vote
yes.
change House Bill 267 to yay.
Yes. You
Sorry.
again?
Yes, it's bad. Like to be recorded in red in House Bill 15.
Get your gold,
Madam
gold
Speaker,
slips up. Yes.
House Bill 15 to red and 303 to green, please.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you,
slips
Madam
up.
Speaker. House Bill 889, in honor of St. Patrick's Day, to green.
Madam Speaker.
Bring the gold slip up here, so they can have.
Madam Speaker, House Bill 1087 to green.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker.
Special order calendar number 40. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 238, Public Safety Police Accountability Time Limit for Filing Administrative Charges.
Recognize the chair of the committee.
I'd move to have this bill sent back to second reading, please.
Question.
I'd move to suspend the rules and have the bill sent back to second reading.
Okay. Question for the House to reconsider the second reading of HB 238. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. House Bill 238 is on second reading. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker, I understand there's an amendment at the desk.
Okay. Recognizing the gentleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have
Well,
amendment at the
that's
desk, amendment number 563322-1.
Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker, the First Amendment is technical. The Second Amendment amends the bill back to current law to retain the beginning of an investigatory timeline for a complaint of police misconduct, that the timeline begins at the filing of a complaint by a citizen as opposed to the date that the appropriate official became aware of the incident. I move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying, I'm sorry. I don't know you got out.
The committee considered the amendment, Madam Speaker, and would
Yes.
consider it a friendly amendment.
Okay,
Ask
all
for
right.
it to be adopted.
Okay, now can I do my thing? Yes, the question for the House is adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Message from the Senate, consent calendar number 20, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 93, Senator Kramer, Ways and Means.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 93, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Hearing no objection, the bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees.
Madam Speaker,
Yes,
vote change.
go ahead.
House Bill 267 to yay, please.
Get your gold slip up. Will leadership come up to the desk? Well, that's the work at the desk. We're going to take a break now and come back at 6. You see on our, we got all this got to get done. And so we had to wait for second readers.
Madam Speaker?
Who? Yes.
Is it too late to change a vote?
Depending on what the vote is.
Well, it was the last couple votes. It's HB 6. It's HB 267. I wish to change it from nay to yay.
Did you put it in your? You have gold slips with you?
Pardon?
You have gold slips to write them on to get them up here?
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Yes.
Permission to use delegate's name, Madam Speaker.
Permission granted.
Colleagues, I'd like to say, wish my good friend from Anne Arundel County, Delegate Seth Smoke Howard, a happy birthday.
Huh? Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will take the call. There being 138 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, just reminding you that the floor will be locked. You can leave your belongings here. Thank you.
Now, really recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Monday, March 17th at 6:00 p.m. Legislative date, March 9th.
Still gonna bang this?